Good afternoon, everyone. This is Master Jose Torres coming to you live with the Martial Arts Experience. I'm excited for our show today for everybody. This is definitely going to be something you don't want to miss. Obviously, Cobra Kai just wrapped. It's been an amazing ride for everybody that's followed it. Obviously, I told the viewers the last time when we spoke that I had a great time being part of the background for the show and getting to meet a lot of people. But tonight's special guest is an amazing actor, martial artist. I actually had a great opportunity to meet him, share some time with him in LA. So without further ado, I would like to bring our special guest today, Mr. Brian Takahashi. How are you, sir? How's everything?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well. So Brian, you're based out of LA, correct?
I am, yes.
And how long have you been in LA? How long have you been in LA?
Oh, born and raised. Born and raised in
Wow.
LA. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And now, Brian, are you currently what are you doing at this time now? Are you doing another film, or do you get a little break?
Not another film, but I am part of a project. It's I'm under NDA still, so I can't talk too much about it. But yeah, doing that's pretty much taking up most of my time. Pretty much be doing that until the end of 2026. So
oh wow,
it's a pretty long project. And then other than that, in between those, it's just just auditioning, doing the acting stuff, making networking connections and things like that. So
awesome.
Nothing too fun, but
How did you get involved in the acting scene? Was this something you've always wanted to do? Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved.
Yeah, honestly, it was just something that it just looked fun. It looked fun, and then it's always that question that you get asked when you're little, like, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? And my answer was, I just want to make people laugh. That would just seem fun, I remember seeing a interview with Mel Gibson of all people, and he was like, I have the best job in the world. I get to make people laugh. I get paid for it,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I want to do that, So I've always been sort of a ham, like to get out there and entertain. So that's kind of what it was. And the only thing that my parents said was, if you're going to do it, then you go on it all the way. Don't half-ass it. So I was like, okay. So went in high school. It was Bishop Montgomery High School. We started the first, I guess, theater there. It was like the first. It was like a club, and it was the English teacher who was like, yeah, if you want to do it, let's do it. So he put together Romeo and Juliet. We did it abridged, I believe.
Now, what character did you play?
I played Mercutio.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I got a cool death scene out of that. And then after that, yeah, I went to college and studied theater arts and graduated with a BA in theater arts, and then just started auditioning from there. Like really, just right out of the gate, just started to do it. I wouldn't say it was like a child actor or anything like that, but from like the age of 18 on up, just doing it. And I've been doing it for, it's gonna give away my age, but like for 20, almost 25 years now. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's a journey, right? It's a journey. You gotta go, and you gotta take the bumps and the dips and all that stuff like that. So, but I believe, and I was just having a conversation with one of my fellow actors, and it's like we both were in the same kind of boat. Like she and I, big shout out to Mile Yamamoto out there. We both kind of went through that. We weren't like really big and stuff like, but we worked, and I think because of our experience, like we were able to grow as an actor. I'm not saying that if you made it, you're not going to, but it's easier to do it if you're not that big, because you're always striving to be better, right? It really does take passion if you are big to be like, yeah, I'm going to keep going. You have to really love it, as opposed to being like, oh, I kind of made it, I'm done. Like I'm here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I'm just talking to actors coming into it. Like you really do have to love it. Like you have to. Anybody who's thinking about getting into this, it's not as easy as it looks. And then if it looks hard, then you're on the right path. And it's there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. And I know it sounds like a bleeding heart, but it does. Like not only time wise, but monetary wise. There's a, like, I'm pretty sure, Jose, exactly what I'm talking about, right? So you have to love it. I think this is the only job where you get used to people saying no to you on a regular basis. It's like nope, and then that's what you kind of just assume that, like, and if you can't handle that, then yeah, I would say this is not the profession for you. There's a lot of other things that you could do creatively that you can get paid for.
Right.
Um,
Now,
yeah,
Brian, does
uh,
anybody else in your family act, and parent, anything like that, or you're the first one?
no, I'm the first one. Yeah,
Wow.
that's why it was kind of like, you sure you want to do this? I was like, yep, just want to do it. And I got really lucky with in terms of parents, having Japanese parents who really were just like, yeah, if you, the only thing was like, you, if you're going to do it, then you're going to do it. Like,
Right. Right.
don't half-ass it, right? So, and of course, they were always like, well, what's your backup? Everyone's like, what's your backup? So, but for the most part, it was like, I really don't have a backup. It's just like I'm kind of doing all this, and of course, I had survival jobs and things like that, but it was like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this as long as I can. And I think that's the mentality you have to have, So
Absolutely. Now, Brian, what did you feel was like the first role that kind of, you said, "Wow," you know what I mean? This was a big one. This is something for me that changed your trajectory. What is that?
shoot, honestly, it's gonna sound cliche, but it's really just this Miyagi role, really.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because like, I mean, you can't get any bigger than that, honestly. Like, I've had roles, but they're, and so in perspective wise, like, I'm Japanese American, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that means, it means that I was born here, but I'm also Japanese, yeah, and a Japanese. And the way you think, the way you approach things is a little bit of both, right? Japanese and American. And I'm pretty sure people who are biracial understand what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita's character, that's like the most iconic character you can be if you are Japanese American or Japanese, right? I mean, it's it's so like fascinating that even if you go to Japan, there's a lot of IPs out here that you think would be big in Japan, but you mention out there and they're like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, Cobra Kai is a good example. Cobra Kai, like, nobody knows what that is in Japan. But if you say Mr. Miyagi, they're like, oh yeah, yeah. They love Karate Kid. They love, so
Wow.
that's like a thing. And so yeah, I mean, I've had other roles in my life, but this is the biggest. Like, this is like, yeah, yeah, I don't even think you can get any really bigger than this, because like, I'm representing a
Yeah.
character that means so much to not just JAs or Japanese Americans, but just people in general,
Everyone.
right?
Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to be able to put that, you know, represent that on screen, was big. Even right now, it's still hitting me how big it. I still have people coming up to me and just being like, "Yeah, this is really big," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it is pretty big,"
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that one, by
This is
far.
it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So Brian, why don't you tell, and I know you've done a lot of interviews, but could you tell our viewers, how did you get the part? How many people
sure,
was it, and what was the process like, and what
sure.
what influenced you, right? Because you had to do some research and create
Yeah,
the voice and do all those things. So please share
yeah.
that with the
So,
viewers.
I mean, yeah, this role, it was like like just like any other role. It comes through your agent. The only difference is, like, and I've mentioned this in other interviews, that when you get a audition for Cobra Kai, it comes under the arborist.
Mm,
It's a, right, tree farmer. So if you don't know who the creators are, you don't know who the executive producers are, you're just going to think, oh, this is just some weird, you know, movie or whatever.
right.
And I think for the most part too, you don't get the actual script. You might
Oh,
get like a version of that.
okay.
But this one came as Cobra Kai. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's actually even though I knew the arborist was Cobra Kai, I was like, oh. And the role was not Miyagi at all. It was
Oh,
just I think the character's name was Yuto, just some Japanese sensei at a tournament.
wow.
And yeah, and the lines were very similar to the lines that Miyagi was giving to Daniel when they first was training, when he actually was like, he's like, you have me paint your fence and your cars, like I'm done. And he was like, karate and set, all that kind of stuff like that. Like that was the lines, right? They were doing,
Right.
but it was to this sensei student, and then Daniel happens to hear that, and it's like, he walks down, and then he's like, "Oh, you remind me of my sensei," and then they have a little exchange, and that's it. So that was the scene. I was like, okay, cool. And if you know anything about Karate Kid or anything like that, you understood what they were doing. They're like, okay, this is a Miyagi-esque character. This is something that they're maybe going to be doing as like a callback to him, because obviously they can't bring him back because he
Right.
passed
Right.
away. Well, at the
Right.
time anyway. So sent it in, did the stuff, and of course, like, um, soon afterwards, like, I get a message from my agent being like, oh. Uh, just in case you haven't done it yet, like, they don't want like a Japanese accent. It has to be a very specific accent. Please watch the Karate Kid. And I was like, why? And she's like, do you know what that means? I'm like, yeah, I know what that means. Like, they want you to do a Mr. Miyagi accent. And I'm like, honestly, if you don't know who Mr. Miyagi is, then maybe you really shouldn't be auditioning for this. It's
Right.
a
Right. Yeah.
very iconic character, right? So, and I'm sorry for other actors. Like, this is how I feel. He's so iconic. You should know. And I think a lot of Japanese Americans, if not all of them, have done a Mr. Miyagi voice at one point in their life. Especially with the whole wax on, wax off stuff. Like, so, sent it in, and then just really didn't think anything of it. And I think as an actor, that's kind of what you have to do. I know there's roles that you're like, oh man, I want this role, but you can make yourself go crazy if you just obsess over that thing. And again, this is one of the roles I'm like, man, I really want this one. I really feel like I can really do a good job with this one. Um, didn't hear back from them until almost like a week before I was supposed to fly out. And then when I did get that message, they're like, "Oh, you booked it. Congratulations, but the character is not Yuto, it's young Miyagi." And that's when I was like, "Wow, okay, that's completely different. Like, cool. I'm actually going to be playing Miyagi, not like a version of him."
Yeah.
And then the other surprise was when they actually sent me the script or the sides for it. Virtually had no dialogue. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
so there's like no dialogue in the scene. It's just like it's literally just fighting, And I had like two, like the lines that if you did see the
Yeah.
episode, it was just that,
Wow.
So I
Wow.
was like, oh, this is completely different than what they had me audition for. And then that's it. The rest is like history. A little bit more for that story was like I was supposed to fly out for 2 weeks in Atlanta. I'm assuming just to like work on the choreography, learn all that stuff. But because of prior engagement, and it's actually the project that I've been working on until 2026, I couldn't fly out in that day, and I thought I was going to lose a part because they're like, no, you have to. It's important that you come
Right.
out. It's for
Right.
choreography, and there was no budging either way from the project that I was already
Committed
what you
to. Yeah.
call it, yeah, committed to, and also Cobra Kai. So, but finally, they got back. They're like, okay, we could fly you out later, but you will only have, I think, like 2 days to do the. Can you do it? We need to know you can fight. And of course, I'm like, yeah, sure, I could. I'm not gonna say no. So I'm like, yeah,
Now, did
okay,
they
I can do it.
know though? They knew you had martial arts background, or no? Not really.
I don't know. I think they asked, and they're like, I have like a stunt reel, and they're like, is that him? Can they actually do them? And they're like, yeah, that's me. I can do all that stuff. So, but yeah, they were like, I don't know if they actually knew, but I have martial arts background, I have stunt background. I haven't done like martial arts like in going to like class and thing for a very long time, to be honest. But I retain all that stuff, and I've been doing a lot more stunts and stuff like that lately. So learning choreography wasn't alien to me. It was like, okay, just show me the
Right.
previs and I can probably get it down, which I
Now,
had to do.
now, Brian,
So
not to put you on the spot though.
mhm.
What belt did you get up to when you trained? Were you very little or?
No, see, so that was the thing. I didn't actually get any belts. Like, so my main training was through my father, and
Oh,
he
nice.
trained
Okay.
in Shorinji Kempo. And I'm actually retaking Shorinji Kempo as we speak because I was like trying to, reestablish that. And I just realized the stuff that I learned was way advanced than what they actually. I was like, oh God, and it was very much like um what you see. It was like, okay, it's like a father son, and he was like, okay, this is the stance, attack me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, just a tech. And then he, of course, I would learn from that, right? So
Yeah.
all this things, all the forms, like we never really drilled. It was just more of a like, okay, it was a kumite, but like after that, it's like, why did you go wrong? Where did you go wrong? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, well, because your stance is off, or your punch is off, or like you block has to be here as opposed to here, all these things like that. So that kind of was like drilled into me for young age. Then I took Shotokan, and I think for Shotokan I went up to like a, man, what was it? Like a red belt or something, but it was very brief. It was just a very brief time to do it. But and then after that, it was just like learning through, I would be in part of groups and stuff like that, and then they were more like meetups and things like that. So you would learn from like someone who's just been doing it for a very long time. And I
Right.
think, I've learned Wing Chun that way. I learned a little bit of Krav Maga that way. Some Aikido. But all of that stuff was just like really good in terms of like the stunt work. And you get to learn all these techniques and be like, oh, I could put that in. And as a stunt coordinator, you could be like, oh, I could put this in. I could put that in.
Right.
Put that in.
Right.
But officially, yeah, I guess from someone who was telling me, like, but like the stuff I was learning, I probably would have gone into like a, I don't know the colors of Shotokan. I mean, Shorinji Kempo, that one, but I think it was like a brown by the
Right.
time like what I learned. But
Yeah.
like learning the basics of Shorinji Kempo, I was like, man, I wish I would have learned that stuff, because it totally does inform all the, because like once they were showing me like this event, I was like, oh, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. They're like, how do you know how to do this? And I was like, well, that's what my dad taught me, like, so I was
How
like,
did
I didn't know.
now is your dad still around? Your dad's still
Yeah,
around?
he's still
Oh,
around.
how,
Yeah.
how does he feel with you playing young Miyagi?
I mean, he thinks it's cool. I mean, it's like it's one of those things where he's like, oh, he's very Japanese. He's like, oh, okay, it's good. And I was like, okay, that's enough. So, I
No, that's
mean, I think he understands, how big it is, but at the same time, it's just like, okay, it's good.
right.
Congratulations, kind of thing like that. So,
But Brian,
um,
I'm gonna pull up some of these pictures here. I mean, your
yes,
look,
please.
man, you're right. I mean,
Yeah,
your look of a young Miyagi, it's amazing.
yeah,
Really amazing. And you know, I was blown away when I first saw you in that second part of the series. Those are the 6 episodes that I was involved with myself. So seeing
yeah,
that, and then this poster that I found online,
yeah.
oh
That's so
man,
dope.
that's a
That's
that's
so
a money
dope.
poster right there. That
Yeah,
is a money
that's
poster.
dope.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I remember getting that sent to me on Instagram. I forget who the artist was, but I was like, damn, that's dope, man. That's really
yeah.
cool. But yeah, going back into like just the fans of like Cobra Kai and Karate Kid, like they're so passionate. Like I would say they're probably the most passionate I've ever seen in terms of like a franchise. Like and it's a big credit to the the actual you know
Creators, right?
the
Yeah,
cast, the creators, like everyone's so gracious for the fans, right? Like everyone is just so like um loving of them. Like I just recently went to the premiere for part three, which is a great experience. But every one of them takes that time to like just go up to the fans and take pictures, and it's really cool to see that they understand that the fans make the
right,
show, right?
right.
So even like into my like very brief experience with that through Instagram and stuff like that, I try to stay very humble and grateful for everybody, and I try to reply back to anybody. So if I haven't replied back to you, I apologize. I tried to, but it is that, and really my big concern, even stepping into this role, was, will the fans, will they accept it? Because again, Pat, Pat is Mr. Miyagi, and
Absolutely.
there's no way around it. But being able to represent a version of him, that was like my main thing. Like, okay, hopefully the fans like this, and for the most part, I would say the outburst of like, wow, you did such a great job, has been overwhelming. It's been
Oh,
very humbling to be like, wow, you
that's
guys
awesome.
really you do dig it. And yeah, that validation from the fans is really what makes it so special for me. Like, I'm like, okay, like I'm not just like the character on TV, and it's like,
Right.
oh, like, yeah, that's that dude, but he's not really Miyagi. But
Yeah,
people are like saying like, oh yeah, like you are Miyagi, you are a young Miyagi at that point.
that's
So, and
awesome.
again, that's the only validation that really could come from that, where it's from the people who see the show, right? Like,
Right.
the show and the writers can say that, but if they don't believe you, then it doesn't mean anything. So,
Right. And you're right. It's funny, you look at the character Mr. Miyagi and what Pat Morita, the late Pat Morita did. That character, not just for, just people that were fans, but even martial artists. There was a lot of people. He was like that father figure that
yeah,
everybody wanted. Everybody wanted
yeah,
their martial arts master to be like that guy,
yep,
right? To
yep,
have that humility, to have that connection, and he really set the bar even for the industry, right? Because people will walk into the door to sign up for the karate and they think that's what they're getting. You know what I mean?
exactly,
And that's
yeah,
what they want. They want that, that paternal father that's going to,
yes,
lead
yes,
them and mentor them. And,
yeah.
that character was amazing. I listen, as a kid, when I watched it, I was like, man, I wish, my instructor was like that,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
And
crazy.
it does speak to, I had another interview a couple of days ago, and we kind of touched on this too, where, Miyagi as that, paternal figure. It's just, I think of what really is, and again, why the Karate Kid is such a beloved story. It's a story about relationships, and it's an older, guy being like, yeah, I will spend my time for you because I believe in you, right?
Right.
And in a day and age right now where, you know people, or especially, men are looking for a very positive male role model, right? Like Miyagi was that, right? And that's the reason why, like, the character Daniel is like, so I wouldn't even say obsessed, but he loves him, right? It's a love. I know he gets a lot of hate for that. I mean, and he's like, Miyagi this, Miyagi that, but, like, it was his dad.
Right.
It was
Right.
the
It was his
first
dad.
time, I think, in that storyline where, again, an older man was like, yeah, I'm going to invest time in you because you're worth it, right?
Right.
And I think, people who are that in real life to other, younger men don't
Mhm.
realize, or if they do realize, great for you, but don't realize how much of an impact you make on that person.
Yep.
Even if it's just like if you're a bigger brother or a mentor or things like that, I still remember the gentlemen in my life who were older, who weren't my dad, were just being able to spend time with me
Right.
for no real, particular reason, just to be like, yeah, I want to teach you something. I want to give you something
Yeah.
that, I might have not been able to give to, my son or something, or maybe they never had kids, so they were trying to be able to pass down something. So yeah, I mean, and obviously Miyagi was that for a lot of people, and it's like it comes full circle because, like, even though I wasn't like buddies with Pat. I knew Pat, like I knew him like, and I told this story before where, I met Pat Morita first before I even saw the Karate Kid. So when I saw the
Wow.
Karate Kid, I was like, oh, that guy looks like Pat. And then my mom was like, well, that is Pat. And I was like, no, it's not. It doesn't sound like that at all. The way he talks, the way his manners, nothing compared. And it didn't really dawn on me that he was an actor. And I was like, oh, okay, so, but the legacy that he brings, not only to, through Mr. Miyagi, but as him, as Pat Morita, it does still resonate with me. So an example of that is, um, I'm really close with Tamlin Tomita, and I was able to really meet Yuji, and who plays Chosen
Awesome.
in the show. And they both have a connection to Pat. And the thing is, like, Tamlin is a big, huge advocate for the Japanese American community. Like, she's always at all the events, and she's, always trying to promote things, and also in the Asian American community as a whole. Um, and I recently talked to this casting director who knew both of them, and she was casting for a film, and it was about a Japanese American story. I believe it was about a young woman trying to come in terms with, like, her identity, very much, with like Karate Kid.
Right.
And it was a short, and he was like, um, like, she asked, what who would be your dream cast? Who would be your, And he's like, man, I would love to get Tamlin and Yuji for the mother and father.
Wow.
And yeah, so she's like, well, I know Yuji, maybe I can reach out. So she called Eugene, and and Yuji, if you're watching this, if I get this story wrong, I'll apologize. I'm hearing from the casting, but she was like, "Hey, I had this project, and the director really wants to, have you guys, and it's a Japanese American project." And he goes, "Count me in." And she goes, "Oh, wait, but I haven't told you." She's like, "We can't fly you out because he's in Seattle, it's in LA." And then she's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Doesn't matter." He's like, "I know people down there. Count me in." He goes, "If you want Tamlin, I'm good friends with her. I'll reach out to her." And she's like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." So she's like, "Okay." And then later on, she asked like, "Well, why did you do this? Why it's a small budget?" It's like, and he says, and again, this is from the casting director. He's like, "When I was working with Pat, he told me and Tamlin that you guys are the next generation. You guys are the new younger Japanese Americans. You need to take care of us. We have to pave our own way. We have to do that because nobody else will." And that example, that Yuji did when he came down to do the film, and what I see Tamlin does, it's still there. And I've learned to do that just because I'm watching Tamlin. She's a
Yeah.
connector. She puts people together and stuff like that. Um, and it's like, yeah, we need that. So I do that because it's a good example. So, going back to Miyagi, like Pat's like, I don't know, I guess effect on like the industry and just like Japanese has resonated all the way till now. Even that after he's gone, it's still here. So it's just all of those things. To be able to represent his character is awesome. And Tamlin is one of the first people I told because she was in the shows. I felt like it was safe. And she's like, "It's full circle. It's a full circle." And I was like, "Yeah, I
Awesome.
guess so."
That's
So
awesome. Yeah. That
yeah,
that so and how did you work? Because obviously you did have some lines, right? And you had to work on
yeah.
the accent. So what was like that? Did you feel
Oh
like
yes, yes.
a lot of pressure? Like you're like, oh my God, I gotta hit this.
Yes. Sorry, let me get to the So, once I found out it was Miyagi, like it was actually Miyagi. I did a version of me and Miyagi accent for the audition and things like that, but I was like, okay, no, I gotta get this right? And I didn't want to do an imitation of what Pat did because that's not genuine, right? So I was like, okay, well, what are the key things that makes him Miyagi? Like what are the things that if you were to do the accent, again, if you just do the accent, it comes off sounding like you're doing the accent. It's like,
Right.
but what is like the purpose behind stuff like so for an example of like, yeah, there's a certain cadence that he has, right? And there's certain mannerisms, right? And that was all Pat. That was all him. So I know a lot of people like to quote the whole wax on wax stuff, but I like to quote like the sanding the floor, the sand the floor, right? And there's a way that kind of rolls off. He goes, Sandofra, show me Sandofra. And then, and then Daniel will go there. He's like, up, stand up. And he goes, Rukinai, Rukinai. And then he has all these things that Pat peppered in. And obviously, I'm not like trying to like cut, but I'm like, okay, those are the things that make him special. I'm not doing that in the scene. I'm not telling, Daniel to stand up for it, but the meaning behind that, the way the line is being delivered, it does like inform me. Okay, how am I going to say this line? The
Right.
funny thing is, when I actually was doing the scene, it was all in Japanese.
Huh.
It was all in Japanese, so all the lines they were supposed to be all in Japanese. So I learned everything in Japanese, and then the one take, they're like, I think it might have been the writer or something. I could just hear them, off screen. They're like, "Hey Brian, can we get that in English?" And I did not really practice that in English. And I was like, sure, So what they got was like me trying to like cobble together like all the stuff that I try to learn and then like
Right.
forget, right? And as an actor, for me anyway, it's like, yeah, you prep, and then when you're on set, you just let that go,
Right.
and then hopefully it still remains, and it did. And like the line, I was not like sitting there being like, Daniel, that's your pro. I didn't do any of that. I was just like, oh shit, I gotta do this in English now. Okay. And I quickly went off and I looked at the lines. I was like, okay, that's what it is. And we did the scene and
Yeah.
that's what came out. And then all that prep work of me knowing like sound of flow and all that stuff like that really came and like became those lines. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, I think that was like the second take we did, because the first take I actually was like, I don't know the lines. I was like line. So the second take was what we got onto the actual episode. But the only thing in English that I actually was working on was towards the end, where he morphs into the old Miyagi. So that was me doing that. I don't know if they actually used my voice for that, but I was doing all that stuff,
Wow.
and so yeah, like all that work really just went into informing how those lines came out. But it really just comes out from like an organic place where it's like, okay, well, he's trying to give this information, but he doesn't speak English, so he's going to try his best to kind of like, and then when he gets frustrated, that's when like the Japanese comes out, right? That's like, yeah.
Yeah.
um but and he's trying to take the most, to me anyway, he's trying to take the most shortest distance to get that information to this person.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's the lines and the way that the mannerisms, stuff like that, it was just like me going back and watching everything and being like, okay, well, why is he doing this? Why did Pat do this, right? And of
Was
course
there
I would
one,
never know.
Brian? Was there one specific movie, Karate Kid Part One, Two, or Three, that really was like that was your encyclopedia that you focused on?
It was one, like,
Okay.
one is like to me that was like the most like truest form of Mr. Miyagi, because really, that was Pat. Like, it was all Pat. If you look at all these interviews and stuff like that, according to what was going on, like, Mr. Miyagi wasn't fully fleshed out. He was just supposed to be like this wise, like, karate sensei kind of, the writer based him off of his karate sensei, David Fumio. So like, it's like Pat really had to take that and make it his own.
Right.
So you were seeing, just Pat's creativity there, right? All the stuff that he was doing to make Mr. Miyagi into a three-dimensional character. Yeah, that was, and then of course the two and three were more informed from one, but one is like, to me, is like the most purest form of that. So I studied that a lot. Of course, there's a lot in two and a lot of in three, and two had a lot more of like the dramatic moments, especially
Right.
with Sato and things like that. So I did watch that. And then three has that good moment where Miyagi comes back, and that whole apartment building is being torn down. So, and he has like that very somber moment of like realizing that he has to probably start all over again. So all of those, really informed it. But one was, to me, like the most crucial one. Yeah. So,
What was it like working with Ralph Macchio?
oh,
Did you know him? You didn't know him before that, or you did
no,
know him?
didn't know him before that. No, Ralph was great. Ralph, I mean, the guy is a machine, man. Like, he comes in, he learns choreo. He's also one of the executive producers, so he's like, like, what's this scene? What's going on? It was great to just watch him work, and not even just as an actor, just to see him, right? Like,
Right.
we rehearsed with him the day of the shoot, and
Mm.
I don't think he had any prior rehearsals for that. Like, he got the choreo like down like quick. Um, and he was fighting with an injured arm, I believe, too. So
Oh
like, his
wow.
left arm was hurt. So like,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, he's super professional. Even in the scenes where he doesn't really need to be there, right? Like, he had to leave. There's one example, like, he had to leave. He had to get into another costume and shoot this other scene. But it was this take that actually took the longest, of me standing over the camera and giving the line. You're like, that, what was the line? Miyagi never tell you everything, Daniel. So that line when he punches, and he's like, "Oh, I can't leave that." He's like, I need to be there for coverage. Like, Brian, you need me, right? And I was like, "No, it's okay, Ralph." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I'll stay. I'll stay."
That's awesome.
And I was like, "No, it's okay, man. Like, I understand you're busy." He goes like, "You sure?" He's like, "I don't want to be one of those actors that just like leaves in a." He's like, "That's not me." And I was like, "No, no, I get it. You're busy, and all I'm doing is just like,
Right.
he's just lying there, right?" So he's like, "Okay, as long as you're okay with it, man." He's like, I don't want to leave you hanging. And I was like, "No, no, you're not." But he was willing to just sit there and stand there and like just give me, even though he's not saying anything, just give me, his presence. So yeah, he's great. And then just working with him, uh, yeah, he really just like gets it. Like, when he's in his executive producer mode, he's like, okay, this is this. But when he's in actor mode, he just focuses. He's just there. He becomes Daniel. There's a take that they did where he's like saying, he's like, it's me, like, just tell me what's, and he's like tearing up, and I'm like, dude, this is awesome. But they didn't use that, obviously, like what we saw, which makes sense, because like, no spoiler, but like it they didn't probably use that because it kind of foreshadows what the other scene is,
Right.
so I was like,
Right.
okay, I understand that. But no, he was awesome, and he gave me probably the best compliment that I could have ever gotten on that set. Where we're just talking, and he goes, "Man, you remind me of him." He's like, "I
Wow.
get
Really?
chills. Like when I listen to you, I get goosebumps." And I'm like, "Cool." And I knew exactly who was talking. He's like, "Man, yeah." He's like, "I guess we found the right guy." I was like, "I guess." But I think I would like to think that, like, because of that, he was really able to lock in
Right.
and just really talk to Pat at that moment, and really get that emotion going. So no, he's great. Everybody on that set was
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
And now,
So
did you really have a lot of you didn't have no interaction with anybody else, right? Because you were just coming in and do those scenes with Ralph, right?
yeah, I only really met, so on the set I met the stunt people. I met all the stunt guys.
Yep. Yep.
I met Jola in passing. Miguel. I met him in passing. I met Thomas, who plays Silver.
Yep.
Terry Silver,
Yep.
and that was just because he was just shooting his scene prior to us, and he just happened to walk through.
Okay.
Um, and then of course William, William Christopher Ford, he was
Yep.
there. But everyone else, like, oh, and then Yuji towards the end, like Yuji came. But yeah, everybody was so busy doing other stuff, or I think they might even close that set down. I'm not quite sure
Okay.
because it was a pretty small crew that was in there. It wasn't like a lot of like looky loos. And they kept having me come through like a different entrance, so maybe they didn't want any sort of spoilers or
Yeah.
anything like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So yeah, and I was only there for a week. So, and really, if you really break it down, really just 4 days. So didn't really get to meet a lot of stuff. I saw people, but like everybody was doing their thing. So I don't want to be like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Um, for a brief second, I saw Mary Mauser, who plays Samantha, but she was just like full on learning her choreo and things like that. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna, And I saw a lot of the younger cast too, which kind of made me feel like, man, I'm old, man. It's always, but yeah, I know I saw them, but I never really met them.
Gotcha.
They're all working. So, but yeah, the only people that I really got to talk to was Ralph and his wife. That's pretty much it.
Awesome.
And yeah, and then after that, they're like, okay, go back to LA. I was like, okay, thanks. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, so Brian, part three came out. I mean, it's been a huge success. I mean, there's people
mhm.
crying, there's blogs. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
I think went out with a bang, right? I hope
yeah,
everybody's happy,
yeah.
Um, now taking that step back, because obviously you couldn't talk a lot about it before, but now that you're
Mhm.
able to kind of take that step back, how do you feel? How do you feel that you're part of that, iconic
Oh,
juggernaut of Cobra Kai? You know what I
yeah. It's amazing. I mean, again, it doesn't really hit you until you realize how much the show means to so many people,
mean? Right,
and how much these characters mean to these people, to the fans, right? So just to be part of that it's awesome. Um, I was telling my wife, like, we watch Cobra Kai, and it's like our guilty pleasure, and and never in a million years where I would have been like, I'm gonna be part of the show,
right,
or even like, that being part of the show, you would be Mr. Miyagi. Like that's like you don't even think that. Like I'm just like, I it's funny because I did get an audition like a long time ago for Cobra Kai, the Arborist, but it never went anywhere.
right,
So it was like, okay, that it might possible, but like it was far from what I would have predicted.
right,
To now be able to be like, yeah, I'm like, and not only part of the Cobra Kai history or Miyagi verse, but being part of the Karate Kid Miyagi verse by being, yeah, it's mind blowing, really. Because I'm
yeah,
like, if you sit there and think about it, you're like, wow, that's crazy. But um, as a whole, I'm just glad to be, yeah, like it's just glad to be part of it. It's a wild ride. And having, if like something were to happen to me, knock on wood, like today, it's like like that. That's always going to be there. People are
Right.
always going to acknowledge that. Okay, yeah, yes, you were young Miyagi, at one point. So
Now,
and
Brian. I mean, the thing is, you talked about the younger actors, right? You're saying
yeah.
you're older, but you're not that old because, I mean, there's got to be talk now about. I mean, they could easily do a Miyagi
Oh yeah.
spin-off and a young Miyagi. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. So like I'm not that old. I'm not, but compared to these young cats that were doing all this stuff, I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
okay. No,
yeah,
but yeah, there is talk of doing a spin-off. I mean, I'm not in those conversations, but fingers crossed. And the thing is, having a Miyagi prequel is very, very. It's the time to do it, and there's a lot
yeah.
of like ethnic, stories
Absolutely.
that people are just like into,
Yeah,
but there's very, very few like Japanese American stories, and I think
right,
there's a lot of times that people don't really understand the difference between Japanese and Japanese American. And the fact that Mr. Miyagi went through everything that a Japanese and Japanese American kind of go through. It deals with a lot. So if a Mr. Miyagi prequel was ever to be made, like it would have to be done right. It would have to be
yep,
done in a way where um, the people telling it either get people who understand what it meant to go through internment camp, or get talk to people who understand what it meant to be part of the 442nd, and ultimately understand what it means to be discriminated against. Because if you think about it, Mr. Miyagi didn't know anybody.
right,
He came from Okinawa, and from that came to the States, and then soon afterwards got wrapped up in this whole World War II stuff and had to go to camp, and then went to war. Wife and child died in camp, and then now he's like in this, in it by himself. And the thing is, like, it wasn't like, oh hey, welcome back. It was
right,
like, nah, man, you are still the enemy.
right.
You still have the face of the people that we hate. And
Sure.
I can't imagine what kind of trauma he went through. Not being able to speak the language,
Right,
right? Not having any friends, not anybody, like knowing anybody. It's just like, that's the story I want to know. I want to know
right,
how he got from there to the compassionate, calm, tranquil Mr. Miyagi we see in Karate Kid 1. That's the story I want. I personally, like, as an actor and as a viewer, I want to see that story,
right, right. Which,
right?
yeah,
Like, yeah, like
yeah,
what he took all this trauma, all this pain, and he transformed it into what we saw in Karate Kid 1. But
beautiful.
what happened between that? People who, I'm sure you probably too, Jose, were the people who are the most chill, the most calm, are the most deadly, right? Because they
Yeah,
know pain, they know, and you're like, you don't want to mess with that guy because like
right,
he's too chill, he's too calm,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And yeah, even in my life, the people who have endured the most are the most understanding and the most like, yeah.
right,
So
right,
it wouldn't be a happy story to any
right.
degree. I'm pretty sure his sense of humor will come in, but it's going to be a pretty sad one because again, we already know how he turns out as Mr. Miyagi.
Right.
We need to see that
But
process,
they could
right?
easily take a whole, if they dove into the Sakai Takai and the torn.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God, that's at least 3 seasons worth ready to go.
exactly. Yeah, honestly, I think the Miyagi prequel would work better as a film than
Ah,
episodic.
okay,
Because the film would really have to be judicious about what you tell, right?
right,
And if you get too much into anything, I think you get lost in the weeds about Miyagi as a character.
right,
You might get too much into the whole camp experience of the 244, or even the Sekai Taikai thing. But really, what made Mr. Miyagi really appealing to most people is him.
right.
What makes him him, right? It wasn't really the martial arts. It wasn't really like all the funny quips he had. It was all of that together. you know I personally think, like, yeah, learning that is what's going to make this film, whatever it is, prequel, be very successful, because you're going to just add on to what we already love about him, and then like appreciate, I think, more, because what it took for him to become that, right? Because he could have easily just become a bitter, you know hate-filled guy
Right.
see Daniel and be like, screw you, I'm not gonna help you, right?
Right. Right.
But he did it. He was like, and then Daniel really is what brings him um, healing.
Right. Right. Right.
Like
Right.
he becomes complete after being able to help
Oh,
and
Daniel.
train
Yeah.
Daniel. Yeah.
He really, humanized them. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So obviously you spoke about, your other project. Obviously you have this, increased attention, fame, whatever it is from being it. I mean, how does it feel though? It's got to feel pretty cool though. I mean,
I mean, it feels really cool. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, really, what it is like, I've been doing this for a long time, and then the fame and stuff like that. That's like honestly, even being on like the red carpet and stuff like that. It's cool, but
right,
it's not really my thing. And it's just like, okay, it's good for publicity, right?
right,
But it's really just like knowing that the work that I did made it had an effect with somebody. That's pretty much it. Again, as an artist, right? And then a lot of people like look at artists and actors as two different things, but really, we're artists, and
right,
to be able to make something that you know gives someone something or like a feeling or whatever, that to me is like the biggest thing. So it does feel great, to have someone come up to me or even in like Instagram and be like, I really enjoyed your portrayal when you, or like, hey, like watching you brought back so many memories when I was little and things like that. And that to me is like the best thing, like it's
right.
better than any sort of red carpet, anything like that. It's just knowing that my work is important, right? And to somebody.
Right.
But yeah, it feels great, man. Not gonna lie, it feels great to like
Enjoy it, man. You
have
deserve
acknowledgement. Yeah,
every part of it. And I want to say something to the viewers. I know we got some people watch. I had the pleasure of meeting Brian. I was in California, and I did not know Brian before today. Before I had met him, and we have a mutual friend, William Christopher Ford. And I'm going to tell all of our viewers, Brian is a real deal. He's a great guy. He's got a great heart, and probably the most humbling people I've ever met. Again, he was very open to coming onto the show today. We were able to have dinner, and we connected, and obviously, we're talking behind the scenes. I'm trying to get some work together for us. The one thing I'll say, and to our viewers, obviously we see these people on screen, and we never know what type of person, because there's some people that, they're great actors. They look great on camera, but they're not good human beings. They're not. And I've met some people that are not good human beings, but I want to tell all of the viewers, Brian's real deal. Brian's, you're the real deal, man. Absolutely. And I hope nothing, but the best and success. And, I hope you're getting that first call when they decide to do the Miyagi verse
yeah,
movie and,
yeah.
Everything else in this new project. But, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I
Thank
met
you.
you and you had a
Thank
great
you.
heart.
And
So,
that goes exactly to you, Jose. Like when I like William can say nothing but good things about you. And then the fact that the story that you're telling about how you got your project made is like, it's like wow. And like if people don't just like do that, unless they really, believe in you or they like you. And then if it's the same thing, then man, right? That's the magic right there. So whatever you just said to me, it's like it's right back to you, sir. Like yeah, like
thank you.
just seeing the people in that room come out, from all the way from Jersey, right, to come out
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to show you support is like it's very inspiring. So
Thank
yeah,
you so much. I appreciate it. Brian, we're getting around the 50-minute mark of the interview. I think that we could probably hang for 2 to 3 hours. However, what I would like to do is, what advice can you give? Now, obviously, you've went from, you did a lot of projects to all of a sudden, boom, now you hit this, iconic role. I mean,
yeah,
you're it. Now you're it. It's not
yeah.
changing. What advice can you give an aspiring actor, to be able to stay focused and kind of see that vision?
Mm.
What advice?
That's a great question. Yeah. So the best thing is, you have to believe in yourself. And I know that sounds really cliche, but you have to believe in yourself. And the thing is, no one else is going to believe in you more than yourself, right? And no one else can believe in you more than yourself. Because if they see passion in you, that means that gives them confidence into believing more, right? If you
Right,
have that self-doubt, you need to ask why, right? um, Acting, right? Acting is a numbers game, really. But you have to stay strong because you're constantly being told, no, you're not good enough, or no, we don't want you. So you have to stay true to you, believe in yourself, and know that what you're doing is important. And I think that's the main thing. I know a lot of times people trivialize acting and things like that. It's like, oh, you're not gonna never make money. It's not about making money, right? It's about staying true to you. And it's just like martial arts, right? It's
Right.
you have to understand why you're doing it. Otherwise, the katas and the forms don't make any sense. It's just like I'm throwing this punch, but like why?
Right.
I'm doing this, but why? Well, you're doing this because you don't want to get hit in the head, right?
Right.
Same thing with acting. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what is your motivation of doing this, right? And to me, that's the kernel, right? You got to figure out why you want to do this, and if it's like it's the only thing I want to do, then you're on the right track, right? Because then
Right.
you are going to believe in yourself, and nothing's going to get in your way, right?
Right.
So, any aspiring actors out there, take the tools that you need in order to become the best version of you, just like training in martial arts, right? But at the very core of it, you have to have that confidence in knowing that, like, I can do this, because there's going to be so many people around you who are going to tell you otherwise, right? That you have to be resilient to be like, nope, thanks for that feedback, but
Right.
I know why I'm doing this. Yeah, I'm good enough, right? And
Right.
eventually, something's going to happen, right? Your luck is when preparation and skill come together, right?
Right.
The moment that door opens, you're like, I'm ready,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
not gonna be
Right.
like, no, no, wait, like that's what it is. So
Yeah.
that's the best advice I can give to actors. Believe
Awesome.
in yourself, and eventually everybody else will too. So
Hey, everybody listen. I mean, that's great words. And you never know, right? You never know when something's gonna
you
pop
never know.
off. You
You
never
never
know
know.
this connection leads to this, to this.
Yep.
I share William. I'm telling you, I always thank William so much. If I never met William Ford, I never would have done my first movie. I definitely wouldn't have gotten 50% of the guests on my show. I never would have met you. And you never know these connections and why they happen and why that synergy and why
Yep.
God puts these things. It's crazy,
Yes.
but exciting as well. It's very,
Yeah.
very exciting. So
Yeah.
I have a favorite. This is going to put you on the spot, Brian. This is totally going to put
Sure.
you on the spot.
Sure.
So you did a little bit of the accent. I was going to ask you as a request, is there any way? So normally I have some of my guests, they'll sign off. They'll say, hey, you're watching the martial arts experience. Would you consider doing, hey, this is young Miyagi and you're watching the martial arts experience? However, whatever
Sure.
words you want to say. But if you could give
Sure.
that to my
Let's
viewers,
see.
it'll be locked in whenever you're ready.
Right. This is Miyagi. You watching martial arts experience with Jose Torres.
Awesome, brother. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brian. Man.
Thank you.
You're the
Thank you
man.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, as I told, and as he mentioned to us, he's got some new projects coming up. So we definitely send our best wishes for you. Hope everything goes out, and we're going to be keeping our eyes open. Binoculars
Please.
are on you because they want to see if they're going to come out with a young
Yeah.
Miyagi.
Best way you can keep that is like, follow me on Instagram. It's the Brian Takahashi at Instagram. Just the Brian, you see this mug there. And yeah, hopefully we'll learn at the same time. Maybe he'll come out and be like, hey, but whatever it is, yeah, we'll all be on the same ride,
Awesome.
So yeah.
Awesome. To all the viewers, thanks guys for watching us today. This is a great episode 7 for our 4th year doing this. Brian, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you very much.
To all of our viewers, tomorrow we'll be announcing our next guest. Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you have a great weekend, and thank you again to Brian Takahashi, our guest tonight. Have a good night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.